Hello and welcome back to my channel. I'm Jenny. Today's video is going to be a new series on my channel. It is going to be a beginners type series where I go into more depth as to how I apply certain things and why I apply them like that. I have had some questions from friends and subscribers on how I do things, so I did want to kind of start this to kind of go into depth on different types of makeup application. So today I'm going to be doing the base routine, which is like primer, foundation, concealer, and powders. So I am going to go into depth as to how I apply those and why. I am then going to do a face routine, kind of like contour, blush, bronzer, highlight, and then I'm going to do a hooded eye tutorial as well. If there's anything else that you would like to see in this beginner series, please let me know and I will add it to my series list. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom you in and we will start with the primer. So before you go in with foundation, it's always good to use a primer. There are lots of different types of primers. There's mattifying, there's hydrating, luminizing, whatever you can dream of for a primer, there is one. So what I like to use most of the time is the e.l.f. Mineral Infused Face Primer. This has kind of like a silicone-y type base, so it's smoothing on the face. It smooths out pores and stuff like that. So I do have some pretty big pores around my nose, so I do like to use this primer for that reason. So I'm just going to take a pea-sized amount and rub it between my fingers and start there, feathering that product out, because I do need primer in my T-zone area where the makeup tends to come off easier. So I focus it there and feather it out to the rest of the face. I also went ahead and put my eyebrows on. I used to not do that, but I have been applying my eyebrows first so then I can go in around with concealer and clean them up and make them look a little nicer and more even. So now that I've applied primer, I'm going to go in with my foundation, and the foundation I've been loving recently is the NYX Can't Stop Won't Stop foundation. I have mine in the shade Vanilla. This is kind of a demi matte. It's not completely matte, but it's not like satin and glowy either. I really like the formulation of this. So what I'm going to do is take a pump on the back of my hand, just a decent sized pump, and I'm just going to take my finger and then dab it onto the skin. This way I can control the amount of product that goes onto my face. And it's always good to start off with less than more, because it's easier to add more and it's harder to take away a bunch. Start light and work up to the coverage that you desire. I personally don't like more than a medium coverage. Full coverage, I am not a fan of how that looks on my skin. I generally lean toward light medium coverage. So if you do want full coverage, there are plenty of full coverage foundations. Feel free to add more, but this is generally the amount that I go for. So how I like to apply my foundation is with a brush. That's just generally how I prefer it. I don't hate the way a sponge applies foundation, but it's just not my favorite way of applying. The brush that I like to use is the Sigma Flat Top Kabuki, the F80 brush. And what I'm going to do is just start in circular motions and sweeping motions and just blend the foundation into the skin. You also want to blend it down the neck so that you don't have a line where the foundation stops. So now it's concealer time, and I do have quite a few favorite concealers, but this is the one I've been using the most recently. And it is the NYX Can't Stop Won't Stop Concealer, also in the shade Vanilla. This is a pretty full coverage concealer, and I just take the doe foot applicator, and I'm going to start under the eyes. And what I like to do is like a triangle position, because this is a hair lighter than my actual skin tone, and this is going to brighten the areas. You want to brighten areas of the face you want to pull forward, and you want to recede places like contour. We'll get into that in the contour video, but I do want to bring some light to these areas. So I want to do kind of like a triangle type shape, but you don't want to go past your nose because that's going to drag that part of your face down. So I'm also going to take it down the bridge of the nose, and right here where I get red, the chin, the forehead, like the center of the forehead. And I'm also going to take a tiny bit down the jawline. I like to blend my concealer out with a damp beauty sponge, and the sponge that I've been loving lately is the Wet n Wild sponge. It's like $3.99 at Walmart, and it's amazing. It's a really good dupe for the Beauty Blender, which is really expensive. And so what I'm going to do is just bounce the product into the skin. You don't want to swipe because then you're going to have streaks on your face. You want to bounce it into the skin. I'm also going to take it up onto the eyelid to conceal the redness I have around my eyes. And just continue to bounce it into the skin. So now that I have all of my cream liquid products on, I'm going to move into powder. If you are the type of person who likes to use like cream contour, cream blush, things like that, you would put those on before you powder, so that way the creams lay on the creams and not on top of the powders and get all weird and cakey looking. But I'm not going to be using any type of cream blush or contour today, so I am going to move on to my powder. So first I like to set the areas that I put the concealer with a brightening powder. I'm going to take this tapered brush from Moda. It is a blush brush technically, but I really like this for powder instead of blush. I like to use a light powder because it helps with the brightening effect under the eyes and in that T-zone area to pull those areas forward. This is the brightening powder from the Wet n Wild contour palette in the shade Dulce de Leche. And so I'm just going to take this brush and run it into that powder and then bounce it on top of the concealer, because you don't, once again, you don't want to swipe because then it could make the product underneath bunch up. Bounce it on top of the concealer first so that you know you're getting it covered, and then once you know that it's covered, you can sweep over top. So now what I'm going to do is take a more natural skin tone shade powder all over my face to set the rest of that foundation in. The powder that I absolutely love for that is the Milk Makeup Blur and Set Matte Loose Setting Powder. I have mine in the shade Translucent Medium. So I just take the cap off, and it does have this little like, ah, man. Well, it has a lid that just broke off. What I'm going to do is take a big fluffy powder brush. This is the Luxie 502 large powder, and I'm going to take it and just dip it right into the powder, and then just in circular motions rub this into the skin. This is a matte finish, so it does keep my skin matte throughout the day because I tend to get a little bit oily throughout the day. But if you are a more dry person, I would go for a luminous powder, or you may not even need to powder at all. Powdering could potentially make your face very, very dry. So if you have very, very dry skin, you may not even have to powder. But with all makeup, it is trial. Ooh. With all makeup, it is trial and error, and you just need to see what works best for your skin, because just because this routine works for me does not mean that it's going to work for you. I have done a lot of trial and error with makeup. I have had lots and lots of errors, but now I have gotten to the point where I know what works for my skin. So here is what the finished base looks like without any contour, blush, highlight, anything like that on it. This is strictly the base makeup. So this is the final base look, and like I had mentioned a little bit earlier in this video, just because these things work for me does not mean that they are going to work for you. Makeup is all about trial and error, and you got to just see what works well for your skin. I do have like normal type skin right now that leans toward oily in the T-zone. So just because this works for me is not going to work for you. If you have super dry skin, all of this powder is going to make your skin even more dry and it's going to look cakey. So you may want to lean more toward dewy products or just no powder at all. Or if you have super, super oily skin, you may want to use even more powder than me. So you just got to do trial and error and see what works best for you. But these are the steps that work for me. And if you like a light medium coverage, I think that this routine is going to work great for you. The next video in the series is going to be bronzer, contour, blush, and highlight. So the face makeup that goes on top of the base. So make sure that you subscribe to my channel so you know when that video goes live. So thank you for watching this video. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope that you found it helpful. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. And if you would like to subscribe, please feel free. And I'll see you next time. Bye, guys.